In today's video, we're going to be looking into a tool from ESPN Analytics called the Matchup Predictor. You may have seen this tool on ESPN game pages, which shows the expected win probability for each team. We're going to be exploring how accurate these predictions are, and whether they're able to help identify profitable bets on sportsbooks. These Matchup Predictor percentages are shown right next to the betting lines from ESPN Bet. However, there are many times where the two show very different odds, and will even predict different teams to win. For example, here we can see that the Matchup Predictor expects the Cubs to win against the Yankees with a 56.4% win probability. But looking at the lines from ESPN Bet, we can see that the Yankees are the favorite, while the Cubs are actually the underdog. So the main goal of this project is to figure out if the Matchup Predictor can help us find good bets to place, or if it's much more inaccurate than the betting lines and doesn't provide any additional value. So the first step of this process is the data collection. Each morning, I collected data on the Matchup Predictor values, as well as the betting lines for each game. I ended up collecting data for about 1,500 baseball and basketball games between February and July of 2025. Then, using the odds from ESPN Bet, I calculated what each team's win percentage would need to be in order for the bet to be profitable. Using the same example from earlier, the Cubs have odds of plus 110, which means that they need to win at least 47.6% of the time for the bet to be profitable. The Yankees have odds of minus 130, which means they need to win 56.5% of the time to be profitable. According to the Matchup Predictor for this game, the Cubs are expected to win 56.4% of the time. So in this case, we'd want to place a bet on them since this is greater than 47.6%. To calculate the expected value implied by the Matchup Predictor, we can take the estimated probability of winning, which is 56.4%, and multiply by the amount we'd win on a $100 bet, which is $110. Then we can subtract the probability of losing, which is 43.6%, times the $100 that we'd lose. In this case, we can see that the expected value of this bet is $18.44, assuming that the Matchup Predictor is accurate. I repeated this process for all of the games in the dataset and filtered to the ones that had a positive expected value. This left me with 1,051 bets that the Matchup Predictor indicated to be profitable, which means that a bet is recommended for 72% of games in our sample. Now let's look at the actual results of these bets. When the sportsbook odds predicted a team to win, the team actually ended up winning 58.3% of the time. When ESPN's Matchup Predictor predicted a team to win, that team won 58.8% of the time, performing slightly better than the sportsbook odds. So let's see how we would have done if we placed the bets that were indicated to have a positive expected value. To start off, I took the recommended bets and simulated their outcomes, assuming that the Matchup Predictor probabilities were the true chances of each team winning the game. If we placed $100 bets on each game, here's the distribution of total profit we should see from the overall sample of 1,051 bets, assuming that the Matchup Predictor is accurate. The profits range anywhere from $0 to $20,000, with an average profit right around $10,000. And this strategy would be expected to lose money less than 1% of the time. Now let's see what the distribution looks like if we assume that the sportsbook odds are correct. In this case, we can see that the simulations ranged anywhere from a loss of $15,000 to a gain of $5,000. And only 13% of simulations ended with a profit. The average result was a loss of $4,400, which comes out to minus 4.2% and is right around the expected house edge that sportsbooks take. Now let's see where the actual results fall on this graph. After looking at the true results of the recommended bets, the strategy would have ended up with a profit of $167, placing it here between the distributions. This puts it in the bottom 1% of simulations that assume that the Matchup Predictor is perfectly accurate, which indicates that the Matchup Predictor is unlikely to be exactly correct. However, this result also beats the vast majority of simulations that assume that the sportsbook odds are perfectly accurate, landing in the top 10%. And remember that this takes the entire sample of bets that the Matchup Predictor indicated to have a positive expected value, but we can also limit to higher cutoffs to see if the results look any better. When we limit to bets that are indicated to have an expected value of 5% or higher, the profit jumps to $1,048. And the optimal cutoff to choose from this sample would have been placing any bets that had an expected value of 8.1% or higher. This would have resulted in a profit of $3,654, which comes out to a 7% return. Another interesting breakdown to look at was betting on the home team versus the away team. The away team bets were much more profitable, leading to a total gain of $2,379 for the bets with 5% or higher expected value. However, the home team bets performed much worse, seeing a loss of $1,331 in this case. It was interesting to see that the bets that had the highest expected values actually did pretty bad. For example, there were 123 bets that had an indicated expected value of 20% or higher. But these bets actually saw a loss of $104, or minus 0.8% from the actual results. So overall, it's obvious that ESPN's Matchup Predictor is nowhere close to perfect, but it does seem like there's a possibility that it's able to provide some additional value rather than just assuming that the sportsbook's lines are perfect. I think it'll be interesting to continue collecting data on its performance, and I also hope to include some other public model predictions to see if they are able to do any better. If you'd like to see any follow-ups on this topic, be sure to subscribe to the channel to stay updated on future projects. Also, be sure to let me know your own ideas on this project in the comments. Thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you next time.